Dendro. It's the newest addition to Genshin Impact, and with its release we were brought a bunch of different elemental reactions that we didn't have for Electro, a dramatic boost to the element I might add, entirely different ways of building certain characters, and new introductions and life breathed into characters like Yaimiko or Kokomi. And overall, depending on where you were and what units you had, it might have been the thing that kicked off a lot of your units and really set them into high gear for what they could do. Aggravate for Yai is wonderful. However, unlike the other elements, Dendro has become much more of an issue not only for itself but also every other element at the moment. And I want to talk about that because I do believe it's getting a lot of praise right now, and I do believe it is in a good spot, but I don't think it's in a fair spot. One of the core things that a lot of people learn about Genshin first on is team composition reactions and which ones are best and which investment and what level of investment they require. For instance, for most people, if you have Ganyu, you doing either melt or freeze, you know about these two elemental reactions in particular and how they benefit you in what situations. If you're playing someone like Diluc, you know about vaporize. Whereas with Yoimiya, you might actually use overload, Yulo you may use superconduct, and so on. The primary benefit of knowing all of this is that each one of these has a specific use. Superconduct is made to boost your physical damage sealers like Razor, like Eula, and so on. Whereas something like Melt and Vape are the DPS essential reactions. They're used to boost your Ganyu's damage, your Diluc's damage, your Hu Tao, your Yoimiya's. The benefit of all of these is that you can do whichever one you really prefer for the DPS that you're using. Not only this, but you can also plan your entire team around it because we were introduced with a roster of units who could essentially do all of them at once. Early game, and then I got extended as we went to new regions and got new characters. Dendro isn't like that. See, the benefit of Dendro being added in super late is that, don't get me wrong, it was Sumeru's most exciting thing. And don't get me wrong, it was a really nice change, but Dendro was not tested for balance. Dendro has dramatically shifted it to a point to where if you're not using Hyper Bloom, then what are you using and why? Dendro is not a balanced element, and I really think that one of the biggest issues it's facing right now is that if we had Dendro characters who were introduced and just did damage early on, but then this entire element was reshaped as we got to Sumeru, that would have been fine. I think if it was a situation kind of like Geo, where Geo was bad until after it got buffed a little bit, then it became a bit better, and now it's still pretty bad, but it's better than what it was. Sumeru should have not released with the only Dendro units. Instead, we should have gotten Dendro units back into the days of Leeway or even Mondstadt. And once we got those Dendro units, we should have had much more time to figure out what the element should be. And then finally, once we reached Sumeru, Hoyoverse could have added them in. Or if they weren't going to do that and change the reactions once we got to Sumeru, they should have released a lot more 4 stars. I think people would have been much more accepting of a lot of the later units like Nilo if Sumeru had just had the one banner where we had Tignari and the entire roster of 4-star units on that banner were Dendro. If we had Kale, another off-field Dendro applicator, and maybe a mini 4-star Dendro DPS, that would have been perfectly fine. But giving us either the Dendro Traveler or Kale and each one having their own set of issues doesn't necessarily help. Now don't get me wrong, there are benefits to using them and they're decent enough. But the issue you're running into is that now we've released a bunch of characters who factually just don't have the support they need. Let's take into consideration, Sino still doesn't have his proper support, and yeah, Nahida helps, but most people are looking at Baijo. Nilo needed Nahida, and she needs a bunch of other characters to really get her blooms running because nobody applies enough Dendro, and that's the issue as of right now. Nobody either applies long enough Dendro, or off-field Dendro, so everybody is funneled into rolling for Nahida. And this isn't a bad thing, because if we're looking at Archons, yeah, they're really strong in their meta, but none of the Archons have ever been required. Which is something that I want to clarify. The difference is Venti is good, but you can replace him with Kazo. You can use Sucrose as a 4-star if you want to. You need energy recharge, but you hate Ride? Cool, why not use Fischl? Why not build ER in your characters? You can use high particle generation characters. You can use Fav Lance and Fav Sword just to mitigate it in general. Zhongli, you don't like the character? You have Noelle, you have Layla, you have any crystallized shield, you have Diona, you can use Beto. You have options, and that's the thing. Nahida has no viable alternative who does what she does to that degree. You want high elemental application off field where your closest options are either the Dendro Traveler who's burst reliant and that burst does not move, or your option is Kale, and Kale is decent enough depending on who you are, but you need to be right up close to the enemy. As in, if you're playing somebody like Melt Ganyu, you are still not close enough. You need to be physically touching them for that E to continue to proc. And this runs into an issue where if you're like me and you have Sino, or you're like a lot of other people and you have Nilo, and you don't have the characters that they need to excel, i.e. Nahida, then your character is underperforming. And it's a stage where, yeah, the new reactions are great for characters, but a lot of people I think still need to learn the basic reactions. If you're a new player and all you're really hearing about is Dendro, 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 and you're looking at all the reactions in the game, Melt, Vape, you're looking at Super Conduct, Electrocharge, Swirl, Overload, and you're seeing all these of which are the 1.0 reactions. In addition to that, now you have Sumeru reactions, which are extra complicated. It's much more difficult to learn about what to do, who's triggering the blooms here, who's triggering hyper blooms. Okay, now how do you build for that when you're technically using Hydro, Dendro, and Electro to create this one reaction? In what scenarios are these reactions good? Single target, multi-target? What is the situation for these? It is much more complicated, and yeah, people are focusing on them, but I don't think it's really fair to ever call that a good focal point. Dendro's become much more of a lockdown thing. You need Nahida to actually understand and use the element pretty efficiently. You have the Dendro Traveler, cool. Make sure your enemies don't move around. If you're fighting with Mango Kenki and that Mango Kenki slides out of that burst area, guess what? Your reactions are done. If you're using Sino, well now, actually, as a Sino user, he still doesn't have, his teams aren't the best. You want to go aggravate Sino? Cool, DMC, Official, and maybe Zhongli or somebody else to provide you with the shielding and the healing you may need. Great. Okay, you want to go Hyper Bloom? You can go Sino, Dendro Traveler, and Official or Xingqiu if you really need to, and then have that third slot or final slot be filled with whoever. You can use Beidou, you can use Kuki Shinobu for the healing, but you still don't have the right amount of Dendro application. A lot of times your other teammates will have their bursts up before your Dendro Traveler. So you need a skill or something else that has a really easy high application. Oh, that's Nahida. Oh wait, well what if you don't like Nahida? Too bad, so sad. She is the most required archon, and it's not for a good reason. She's not super required because she is also super good. She's required and really good because there are no options. Sumeru is an element and a region realistically that doesn't necessarily do a lot of things well, in my opinion. You know, the story is meh. Nahida is the characters, they're there. They are the characters of our time. The elements is a element that really should have been beta tested a lot longer than it already is. And it should have released a lot more 4 stars. I'm not happy with the ratio of 4 stars. And I don't think that it's fair to like directly lock down characters. If you are a Nilo player and you really wanted to build her as good as you could, you needed off-field Dendro. And that's not just a, you know, you might need more Dendro, you might need more off-field. No, that's just built into her kit. That's the only way you can really play her efficiently. And your options are Nahida and Kale, because even the Traveler, if we're looking at them, sure, the burst is decent enough, but it doesn't move around as much as Nilo would like. You need high, consistent Dendro application, and there's nobody who does that at the moment other than Nahida. And it sucks because you're forced into getting Nahida or really working around her. And it's also bad because she was released so early on for the element, no one else is around. It's allowed to have a kit vaguely similar to her. Like, it's been ages since we got a geo-dedicated shielder like Zhongli. Nobody else does energy like Raiden does. Venti took ages to get Kazuha to do something similar, not even the same. It's going to take forever for somebody like Nahida to come along, and that's most likely going to ruin a lot of teams, a lot of people's enjoyment of the Dendro element, because you have to use Nahida. She's going to become the Bennett of Dendro, which is fine if we had other Dendros, and we don't. But I want to know your opinion. Do you use Dendro? I personally stick to my Melt, I stick to my Vape, I stick to my common teams, the ones I have used for ages, because I know they're good, I know they work, and I know they're fun to play. I know I don't need to pull for a new unit specifically to enable them, but I have tried out Hype Bloom with Sign Up, and it's fun. I just wish I had options. Either way, it's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.